My name is Donald Mulson. I'm a business program specialist with USDA Rural Development here in Michigan. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Value Added Producer Grant and this year's upcoming application cycle. So it's a pretty complicated program, but it has a very simple purpose. And that purpose is to assist ag producers to enter into value-added activities for their commodities. And for this program, you apply directly with rural development. It's not through a bank or a third party like some of our other programs. It's going to be directly with our state office. And there are two ways that you can use funds in this program, and it's one or the other. So you can apply for a planning grant or a working capital grant. Planning grants are used to hire consultants to prepare business plans, feasibility studies, marketing studies. Working capital grants are grant funds used to help cover the day-to-day expenses related to the value-added business. So the key there is the value-added business. So anything pre-harvest is not an eligible expense. This is all post-harvest processing, marketing, selling related to the value-added product. And a couple of things the value-added producer grant is not, because it can get pretty complicated on what you can use funds for. It's not designed to be a job training program. It's not designed to help you start up a farm or teach someone how to farm or teach your new employees. It's not for research and development, a loan program. It's not to help keep your business afloat as a stream of capital, and it's not used to purchase real estate, improve real estate, purchase equipment, anything like that. It's just strictly related to working capital for your value-added project. So many rural development programs have obviously the rural area limits and rural area designations and population limits. Value-added is kind of unique because there is no population limit. Theoretically, a farm or ranch could be in an urban area. A greenhouse could be in an urban area, and the market where you're selling your product could be in an urban area. And to qualify for the program, you have to meet one of 4 eligible applicant types. You can be an independent producer, a farmer or rancher cooperative, an ag producer group, or a majority controlled producer-based business. And I'll go over the definition of all those in the upcoming slides, but no matter which entity you're applying as, you have to meet our basic definition of an ag producer, and that's an individual or entity that produces the ag commodity through the participation in the day-to-day labor management and field operations. The key there is that bold section, the participation in the day-to-day labor management and field operations. Whoever is applying for this grant has to be active, in the day-to-day of the farm or ranch. So an independent producer, that's defined, and this is our most common type of applicant, that's defined as an individual ag producer or producers or entities that are solely owned and controlled by agricultural producers. An agricultural harvester is also an example of this, as long as they have the legal right to harvest the primary and not the residual commodity. Those are like commercial fishermen and loggers. Again, our most common type. And this type of applicant has the most flexibility with the type of applications they can submit, and I'll go over that in a minute. The next type is the agricultural producer group. This is a nonprofit membership organization that represents independent producers. And the mission includes working on behalf of independent producers. The key for this applicant type is the majority of the membership has to be independent producers, and the majority of the board of directors has to be independent producers. Another applicant type is a farmer or rancher cooperative, and that's just simply a business owned by independent producers that's incorporated. And in Michigan, it's defined as a cooperatively operated business. And the last eligible applicant type is the majority controlled producer-based business venture. So that's an entity where the majority doesn't have to be every single person, but the majority of the financial and voting interest belongs to independent producers. And this is a limited category. Only 10% of available funding is awarded to these type of applicants. So back when I was mentioning the flexibility of an independent producer on what type of application they apply for, there's essentially two types of applications that you look at when you apply for a value-added producer grant. There's emerging market and there's market expansion. So if you're one of the other three applicant types, the ag producer group, the farmer rancher cooperative, or the majority controlled producer-based business, you have to apply for an emerging market application. And that's if, and that's optional for independent producers, but you have to if you're one of the other three. So that's when you've produced and marketed your product, produced or marketed your product for less than 2 years. So that could be like a brand new product that you're bringing out, or an existing product that you're taking into a brand new demographic or geographic market. And the market expansion, it's the only one that an independent producer can apply for compared to the other three entity types. So it's optional for independent producers. This is if you've had your product at least 2 years and you've been producing and marketing it. And you can take that existing product into a new market, or you can take your existing product in your existing market and you can market it to new customers. And the difference between the applications is kind of simplicity. For the market expansion, you do not need a feasibility study. And we'll kind of go over that here coming up. So this is the slide on feasibility studies. All working capital applications must have a feasibility study, except, as I just mentioned, independent producers seeking a grant of greater than $50,000 for market expansion projects, or any application under $50,000. So if you're emerging market or market expansion and you're not asking for more than $50,000, we won't make you get a feasibility study. Any feasibility study must be completed by a qualified consultant. That's an independent third party without a conflict of interest who has the knowledge and expertise and experience to perform the task. That can get a little tricky on what you need. So there's this handy chart that we have that shows, the applicant type, the documentation you need regarding feasibility studies, business plans or marketing plans, and the grant sizes. And the emerging market and market expansion thing can even get a little tricky. Even when I was reading the slide, it can kind of trip you up. If you're not sure what type of application you're applying for, just reach out to us and we'll kind of go over what you should apply for and where you fit if you don't understand it. So, we've covered the applicant types and the application types, and now we have to cover the value-added methodologies. What are you doing to your commodity to make it value-added? And there's 5 acceptable methodologies in this program. There's change in physical state, which is by far the most common. There's produced in a manner that enhances the value. There's product segregation. There's farm or ranch-based renewable energy. And there's locally produced ag food products. And I'll go over the definitions here. So change in physical state, an irreversible processing activity that alters the raw commodity and enhances the value. Very simple here: milk into cheese, wheat into flour, wool into rugs, livestock into meat. Again, our most common application is change in physical state, and produced in a manner that enhances the value of the agricultural commodity is the next methodology. And this is the kind of thing like organic carrots, organic vegetables, free-range eggs, free-range chickens, sort of a non-standard production method that adds value per unit of production. You can think outside of the box with this methodology, but what you have to do is document to us that, hey, the way I'm producing this commodity and this product is more valuable than the standard way. And that's what you have to show us, and that's an acceptable methodology. Product segregation is a seldom used methodology. It's just simply literally physically separating the ag commodity from another variety. And the example of GMO corn separated from non-GMO corn on a farm, that's the only actual type of project I've done under this methodology. So that's the most pertinent example. If you think you have a different kind of project, just let us know and run it by us under this methodology. Farmer ranch-based renewable energy. So that's ag commodity used to generate renewable energy on the farm or ranch, like a dairy manure into methane digester and electricity generated on the farm, corn into biodiesel generated on the farm, wind, solar, geothermal, hydro. That's not an ag commodity, so that's not eligible for this grant. With renewable energy, and my associate Lisa Apple is going to talk about the REAP program, the Rural Energy for America program coming up. That's the first place to start if you have an energy project in mind, and then maybe research the value added after. This is pretty seldom used, but if you think you fit into this, reach out to us and we can take a look at it as well. And the last methodology is locally produced ag food product. So that's an ag food product that's marketed and distributed within 400 miles of the product's origin or within the state lines. So, you grow something locally, you market it locally, you sell it locally. That's what we're looking for here. And no matter which applicant type you are, which application type you're applying for, which methodology you have to demonstrate to us in your application that you're going to increase your customer base and you're going to have revenue return to the producer and increased revenue. And we'll document this throughout your grant through semi-annual reports. But that's something that you're going to have to take a look at and plan and track. Just a quick note on hemp-related projects. If you're familiar with the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp was, for lack of a better term, kind of legalized. And, there's been kind of a hot topic issue in certain circles, and hemp-related projects are eligible under value added with some caveats. Anything CBD oil related with the FDA approval situation can get kind of tricky. If you think you have a hemp project, reach out to us. Things with the hemp hearts and the husks and the seeds and the fibers are usually fine. But when you get into the CBD oil stuff, it gets very tricky for us to do. So continuing on, this is a matching grant. So all applicants must have matching funds at least equal to the grant amount. And matching funds can come from cash. It can come from contribution of the raw commodity. And it can come from, a portion can come from your in-kind labor, your activities when you're spending hours working on the project. Now, matching funds equal to the grant amount is something that's in the current regulation. Under the most recent stimulus package that was passed, there could possibly be some changes to the matching amount. So just keep your eyes peeled on that. We don't have details, but that could change. Better to be safe than sorry. And if you're submitting an application this cycle, I would go ahead and plan on equal matching. It will make your application look stronger anyway if you're contributing more cash. Another bullet point is, you must produce and own more than 51% of the raw commodity that's used. So it's eligible to purchase raw commodity to meet the needs of your project, to meet the scope of your project, but you do have to be producing the majority of the commodity. And you also have to currently produce the commodity at the time of the application, and that includes a planning grant or a working capital grant. So you kind of have to already be in the game of producing commodity. You don't necessarily have to be in the game of your value added portion of your project, but you have to be making that, you have to be producing that commodity. And then you have to own that commodity from its raw state all the way through the production and the point of sale. So you can't just sell your raw commodity and call that your value added product in most cases. You have to own it all the way through. You can pay someone to process your commodity into a value-added product as long as you retain that chain of ownership all the way through. So there are funding priorities in this program. Funding and possible priority points are awarded in various ways to beginning, veteran farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, mid-tier value chains, and persistent poverty counties. And just a couple notes on this application cycle coming up before I wrap up. The application deadline is currently March 22nd for paper and March 16th for applications submitted through grants.gov. I would highly recommend submitting a paper application. We can accept them over email as well. Grants.gov can be very tricky, and if you miss one document, you're going to be deemed ineligible. So paper applications are usually a better way for this program, in my opinion. And approximately $33 million available in funding nationwide. Now, a couple points, like I mentioned with the grant matching amount, the application deadline may get pushed back and there may be more funds available due to that recent stimulus package that was passed. There was some language in there regarding the value-added producer grant program. Lisa and I don't have the exact details yet on this stuff, but keep your eyes peeled. There's probably going to be some announcements coming up. Nothing set in stone, but there could be an extended deadline and there could be some more money available. But I wouldn't, take it easy with your application. I would continue to work hard on it if you're currently working on it. The maximum grant amounts are $250,000 for working capital and $75,000 for a planning grant. There are no minimums. And just a couple more quick notes for applicants. You must have a registration in sam.gov for the duration of the grant. You must obtain a DUNS number. The grant period can be up to 3 years depending on the scope of the project. And grant expenses can only be accrued during the project. So from the start date to the end date. And the start date's defined as when we sign your grant agreement, not when you apply, not when we score your grant, not when we tell you you've been awarded. It's when we put pen to paper. So that's a point of confusion sometimes. And if you have any questions about eligible applications, products, anything like that, you can reach out to myself or Lisa Epple or Bobby Morrison. And our program website, it has all the application information and the toolkits and the federal regulation and everything you need to read in order to process this grant. So now I'm going to kick it over to Lisa Epple, another area specialist here in Michigan, to discuss the Rural Energy for America program grant.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Epple and I am an area specialist with USDA Rural Development. As Donald had mentioned, I am going to talk to you today about USDA's Rural Energy for America program, which is also known as our REAP program. This program is designed to promote renewable energy development and energy efficiency for agricultural producers and rural small businesses. So we're going to talk about the different kinds of renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects that are available, the type of applicants that are eligible for the program, and how you apply. So who's eligible? The program is available to agricultural producers and rural small businesses. Obviously, we're going to focus on agricultural producers today as opposed to small businesses. And agricultural producers are defined as any individual or entity that receives 50% or more of their gross income from agricultural production. You can apply as a rural small business as well, and you have to meet the SBA size standard for the type of business that you are. It should be noted that if you are an agricultural producer, you can be located in any area in the state or country for that matter, as we're a national program. And we don't have any size standards, which is very common in rural development program that the funds can only be used in rural areas. For agriculture producers, we do not have that restriction, so you can be located anywhere. As Donald had mentioned in the value added presentation, you must register for a DUNS number and a SAMS number. We highly recommend that you go ahead and do that sooner rather than later, as it can take some time to get those numbers awarded, and you need to have them prior to submitting an application. Projects are used for the purchase of renewable energy systems, implementation of energy efficiency improvements. The projects must be commercially available and use replicable technology. They have to have technical merit, and as I mentioned previously, for rural small business projects, have to be located in a rural area. If there's any question as to whether your business is located in a rural or urban area, we do have a website that you can go to, type in your address, and it will tell you whether you are eligible or not. Again, for agricultural producer applications, there is no rural limitation. So what can you do with this grant or guaranteed loan? Energy efficiency improvements can be lighting, heating or cooling, ventilation, insulation, automated controls, so energy curtains, high-speed doors, things like that, anything that's going to save you energy and can be documented. Renewable energy projects are often solar, that's probably the most common. Hydroelectric, we've done several anaerobic digesters here in Michigan, geothermal, biomass, and as noted before, the technology has to be commercially available. This program isn't for research and development type projects. If you have any question about your project and whether it fits one of these two categories, we're more than happy to talk to you about it and go over what you would need to have to apply for that type of project. What can you use the funding for? This is a list of both eligible project costs and ineligible project costs. I won't read them all to you, as I'm sure you can read them yourselves, but a couple things to note. Eligible project costs can be for the purchase or installation of either new or refurbished equipment. It can be used for retrofitting a building and post-application construction and facility improvements. One big thing to note that we often talk to agricultural producers about is that farm equipment is not an eligible project cost. So purchasing a new, more energy efficient tractor versus the one that you own now is not eligible for this program, or new trucks, things like that. Another big point to note for this grant, which is different than the value-added grant that was just discussed, is that project costs can be incurred after you submit your application. So you don't have to have been awarded a grant in order to start your project. You just have to have submitted your application and received confirmation that we do have your application. This is a risk on your part, obviously, because you may or may not be funded with the grant or guaranteed loan, but it is eligible under this program. How much can you apply for? Under the grant program, you can apply for up to 25% of project costs. There are minimums and maximums for both renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects. As noted, since the grant is for 25% of the project costs, you as the applicant have to come up with 75%. Once you submit your application, depending on the size of your project and the amount of grant that you're requesting, it will compete a number of times during the fiscal year for funding. While most people want to know about the grants, and that's what we talk about most of the time, there is a guaranteed loan component to this program as well, and it can fund up to 75% of eligible project costs. There's a minimum and maximum, just like the grants, and as an applicant, you'll work with a commercial lender to apply for the guaranteed loan. That lender will come to us, and we will work with them to provide a guarantee for that project. The terms are negotiated between you, the borrower, and the lender, as long as they are within USDA's maximum allowed terms. One thing to note as well is that you can combine and apply for a grant and a guaranteed loan. USDA assistance can only be up to a maximum of 75% of the total costs. So if you do a combined application, you'd be looking at, say, a 25% grant, 50% guaranteed loan, and then another 25% contribution from your own funding. It's estimated that there is about $1.2 million available for grants. And for guaranteed loans, our funds are held at our national office, and there's typically plenty of funding for that program. What are the application deadlines? So we're coming up on an application deadline real quick here as of March 31st, and that is for grant requests of greater than $20,000. Combination grant and loan requests, or some of our special set-aside funding of grant requests of $20,000 or less. In November, we have the deadline for grant requests of $20,000 or less, which are not competing for our set-aside funding. And we accept the guaranteed loan applications on a continual basis. And while these deadlines are coming up, we do accept grant requests year-round, so you can submit your grant request at any time, and then we will hold it and have it compete when the next applicable deadline is. How do you apply? Just like our value-added program, you can get lots of information on our website. As I mentioned, you could submit applications at any time of the year. And you can always contact us as well. And here is all of our contact information to get answers to your questions, to get application materials, to ask about anything that you need to know regarding the programs. All of our staff is here and available to help. All of our contact information is noted here. If you have some very detailed, specific questions, I would recommend that you contact Rick Vanderbeek. He is a business specialist out of our state office in East Lansing. His email is noted on here, and he is our energy coordinator and can help you work through whatever your questions are on application submission. And as we get through a little of the technical stuff, the USDA non-discrimination statement. And that is all we have for you today on the REAP program. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to any of our staff, and we are more than happy to assist you.